At the start of the story, we meet Nate, the most ordinary man no one ever truly notices. Every morning, he follows the same dull routine and heads to work. At the bank, he's the first to arrive and the last to leave. His role as assistant to the manager earns him a daily helping of humiliation. Deep down, Nate knows he's more than capable of being the manager himself, but life doesn't always reward the deserving. Instead, he answers to Nigel, a man even more pitiful than him. But everything is about to change. Tomorrow, his path will cross with Sherry's. Neither of them knows why, but when Nate sees her, the world around her seems to disappear. The noise, the people, everything fades. He finds himself staring too long, almost awkwardly, unable to look away. That same day, Nate is approached by a client whose life is unraveling. The man has just lost his wife of 50 years and now stands on the brink of losing his home. Nate, despite working in an industry where coldness often leads to promotion, can't bring himself to be heartless. He quietly delays some paperwork, giving the man time to receive his late wife's life insurance. That single act of compassion changes everything. It saves the man's home and his small business, and gives him just enough to live on for a few more years, until fate intervenes again. After helping the grieving man, Nate heads out for a coffee break. But as fate would have it, he spots Sherry again. And in that distracted moment, the hot coffee spills across his hand. The burn is immediate and angry looking, but Nate doesn't flinch. Not a twitch, not even the slightest wince. He just stares at her, his expression calm, unreadable. Later, Sherry stops by his office to apologize. She'd seen the spill, but now up close, she realizes the burn is much worse than it looked. Genuinely concerned, she offers to make it up to him. Maybe lunch sometime? Just something casual. You know, the kind of thing you suggest when you feel a little guilty, or maybe just want a reason to spend more time with someone. Sherry's curiosity about Nate is growing. She's new to the office, but she's noticed things, like how he keeps to himself, how no one seems to really know him, how he never joins the others after work. That mystery only draws her in more. Trying to break the ice, she offers him a slice of apple pie. Nate refuses. Then suddenly he snaps. He raises his voice, a sharp rejection he clearly didn't mean to let out. The tension lingers for a moment before Nate sighs and apologizes. He tells her the truth. Nate has a rare genetic condition called CPA, congenital pain anesthesia. He can't feel pain, can't sense heat or cold. For most people, that might sound like a superpower, but for Nate, it's a curse. It's why he's cautious to the point of paranoia. It's why he won't eat solid food. Once, he bit through his own tongue and didn't even notice. And just like that, Sherry's growing fascination turns into a new fear. Not of Nate, but for him. Nate may seem like a superhero, but his condition, congenital pain anesthesia, forces him into an extreme and carefully managed lifestyle. When Sherry learns this, she gently begs him to let her feed him a bite of apple pie, promising to warn him if anything goes wrong. For Nate, it's the first solid food he's had since his teens, and the taste of apple pie leaves him stunned. That night, he tells his online friend about the experience. The response? "You're already failing at life playing games alone on a Saturday. What's the worst that could happen?" Emboldened, Nate accepts Sherry's invitation to an art show. They enjoy the evening, and with Nate's encouragement, Sherry sells her first painting. As they celebrate, an old high school tormentor appears, mocking Nate by calling him Nova Canine, a nod to the film title. Though the bully doesn't lay a hand on him, the encounter is tense. Later, when Sherry asks about Nate's odd-looking watch, he casually admits it reminds him to urinate, since he can't feel the urge. Without it, accidents are a real risk. When Nate returns from the restroom, he finds the bully hitting on Sherry. She calmly orders another round and tells them to leave the past behind. But as the drinks arrive, something changes. Nate feels nothing, but his old bully starts coughing, his throat on fire. A subtle, satisfying revenge. Afterwards, Sherry asks Nate to walk her home. There, she discovers his world. Shelves of medical and history books, self-treated injuries, and homemade tattoos. Scars inked like the battles of a cursed knight. All tell stories of pain he couldn't feel, except his bare chest, left untouched. Waiting, as he says, for the maiden who never came. As Sherry undresses, something stirs in Nate. Not pain, but feeling. Emotions he never thought himself capable of. But he also notices her scars. Physical reminders of a difficult past, etched across her body like battle marks of her own. The next morning, Nate's world feels different. His usual monotony is replaced by something like joy. He walks into work brighter, more alive, happier than an earthworm in spring, and spends an hour trying to find the perfect words to say to Sherry. Then everything shatters. 4 heavily armed men storm the bank, dressed as Santa Claus. They subdue the staff and customers with brutal efficiency. Fizza is forced to open the vault, and when he's too slow, one of the thieves beats him senseless. In the scuffle, the thief's fake beard falls off, exposing his face to Nigel. A second later, Nigel is executed. The silent alarm triggers. The thieves have less than 3 minutes before the police arrive. Desperate, they beat Nate for the vault combination, but he doesn't flinch. He feels none of it. Then they turn to Sherry. Realizing their connection, the thief threatens her instead. That breaks Nate. He gives up the code. They get the money, but they also take Sherry. When Nate wakes up, the vault is open. The chaos is over, and Sherry is gone. Outside the bank, the thieves clash with police using high-caliber weapons, creating chaos and bloodshed. Several officers fall. Amid the gunfire, Nate drags an injured officer to safety. When he hears that reinforcements are 8 minutes out, he makes a decision. He won't wait. He steals a patrol car and gives chase. Bullets fly as the thieves fire recklessly through the streets. The group splits. Nate chooses one car, the one without Sherry, hoping it'll lead him to answers. He corners one of them, Ben, in an alley. Nate pulls a gun, but Ben lunges, disarming him. They crash into a nearby diner, slamming into a kitchen where the fight turns brutal. Ben grabs a hot frying pan and swings hard, again and again, but Nate doesn't back down, can't back down. His disorder, once a curse, is now his edge. He feels none of it. They grapple dangerously close to a deep fryer. Only one of them will leave that kitchen. It's Nate. Ben dies, and Nate is left with nothing but questions, until he finds Ben's phone. It's locked, but it might be the only clue left. Nate contacts an old connection, Roscoe, and asks him to trace the location. Ben was only carrying a portion of the money. That might be just enough for leverage. Meanwhile, back at the bank, Detective Minnie arrives. She hears what Nate did, and she's paying attention now. Detective Minnie is conflicted. Nate's actions are heroic, but something doesn't add up. Is he a love-struck vigilante or a rogue member of the gang gone off script? Meanwhile, Nate visits the elderly man he helped earlier, the one whose home and dignity he saved. With a bullet lodged in his shoulder, Nate needs help. Calmly, the old man removes it. Nate doesn't flinch. He seals the wound with glue, thanks the man, and leaves behind 2 bundles of cash, enough to save the man's business. Roscoe comes through. He texts Nate an address linked to Ben's phone. Nate races there, only to find the lifeless body of Ben's partner. The partner's phone gives the police a digital footprint of Nate, triggering a manhunt. A female officer calls. Against all odds, Nate picks up. He's raw, honest. No, he's not part of the gang. No, he doesn't want revenge. He just wants to save Sherry, the only person who's ever made him feel human. The officer pleads with him to turn himself in. He refuses. He won't stop until Sherry is safe. At the gang's hideout, tension rises. Simon, the ruthless leader, grows nervous. The money is secure, but Ben hasn't come back, and a storm is brewing. Simon senses it. Nate is coming. Ben's brother swears that if Nate shows up, he'll lose far more than money. But the argument is cut short when Sherry steps in. And with that, everything shifts. Sherry is one of them. Furious, she confronts Simon. No one was supposed to die, especially not Nate, Simon promised. But that promise, like everything else, meant nothing to him. Nate arrives with a lead, the contact details of the gang. But his plan unravels when one of the thugs checks his files and realizes Nate isn't just some unlucky bystander. He's coming for them. A storm breaks outside as the enforcer, a mountain of muscle triple Nate's size, hurls him like a rag doll through a towering glass panel. But Nate, ever resourceful, uses the moment to his advantage. He rises, fists bleeding, and begins smashing the shattered glass with his bare hands. Shards embed deep into his skin, transforming every punch into a weapon. It's messy, brutal, creative. Hopefully, he didn't have a manicure scheduled. Each strike now lands with surgical precision and cutting power. Nate doesn't stop until the brute is blinded, then broken. The thug, finally defeated, confesses everything, including the location of his fellow thieves. Nate drives through the storm to a rundown house on the outskirts of town. It looks abandoned, which means it's probably important. He enters. Inside the house is booby-trapped. A gauntlet of pain Nate discovers the hard way. By the time he finds a lead, the name of a workshop Ben was using, his injuries are stacking up and blood is rushing to his head. Nate stumbles and calls Roscoe in desperation. He's losing too much blood. He won't last long without help, but fate's never on Nate's side. Andre, Ben's brother, is already there, looking for him. The moment he sees the triggered traps, he draws his weapon. Then he spots Nate dangling upside down from one of the snares. A call from Simon crackles in. Ben is dead. And the killer? A scrawny guy in a suit. Andre turns slowly. That scrawny guy in a suit is right behind him, helpless, hanging like meat in a butcher's freezer. Fueled by grief and rage, Andre pulls Nate down, ties him to a chair, and begins the torture, blow after blow. But Nate doesn't scream. He can't, so he fakes it, moaning, flinching. acting like every hit is unbearable. Come on, Nate, sell it better than that. Andre begins pulling out Nate's fingernails, excruciating to witness. But Nate, as always, feels nothing. The next target? His eyes. And that would be a problem. It's hard to rescue someone you can't see. Just in time, Roscoe bursts in and knocks Andre out. But Andre isn't down for long. He wakes up and the fight erupts again. Nate is outmatched. Andre's a trained killer. Still, Nate has his edge. No pain. He yanks an arrow from his own leg and drives it into Andre, killing him. Detective Minnie arrives and tries to arrest Nate, but he escapes, stealing Roscoe's scooter and vanishing before she can catch him. Turns out, Nate had already changed into a delivery uniform. Roscoe was just a decoy. Now disguised and determined, Nate heads to the workshop. He arrives just in time to confront Simon. But Simon isn't worried. He laughs because Nate doesn't know the truth. Sherry was in on it. The revelation crushes Nate. Stunned, he drops his guard. Simon knocks him down and grabs his weapon. But Sherry, heartbroken and betrayed herself, turns on Simon. And Simon turns on her, aiming the gun at her head. He was always planning to kill her. Before he can pull the trigger, a shot rings out. Simon drops, a bullet through the chest. It's Coltrane, revealed as one of Minnie's undercover agents. He arrests Sherry. Nate is barely conscious, muscles torn, nerves shredded. He needs urgent medical help. But just as the chaos seems to end, Simon moves. He's still alive. Simon, somehow still alive, opens fire on the officers, then turns the gun on Sherry. She runs, but he hijacks the ambulance where Nate is being treated. Mindy takes a bullet but survives. Sherry, unscathed, gives chase. Inside the speeding ambulance, Nate is thrown from the stretcher as Simon rummages for a gun. He's heading for the docks, where his brother planned to escape. But Nate isn't done yet. He grabs a defibrillator and slams it into Simon's face, unleashing a full jolt of electricity. In the chaos, Simon rips off Nate's burned hand, exposing bone. Sherry screams. She fires, but the shot isn't fatal. Simon tackles her. Nate, bleeding and broken, spots an adrenaline syringe. He jabs it into his chest, surges to his feet, and attacks Simon from behind. It's enough. With a final "I love you," Nate collapses in Sherry's arms. But when you don't feel pain, you don't always know when to die. He survives, so does Mindy. Nate wakes up in the hospital. Mindy informs him he's facing multiple charges, but because he saved 2 officers, he'll only serve 6 months of house arrest. 1 year later, Nate and Sherry sit together. She reveals her new tattoo. He smiles. He's finally found the maiden his heart waited for. Only 8 more months until his sentence is over. And then, they're free. If you enjoyed this film, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, bye-bye.